Moving on to other books and philosophies on reincarnation and the light, I would like to say that I believe in reincarnation and the afterlife, and I think that the former is optional, which explains why there can be grandparents and great-grandparents in the light too. Okay. Enough said. Sorry for butting in, please carry on, Andrew. Andrew. Now, as for the spirits seeing into the future, I must add that as soon as one has seen into the future, then that future naturally becomes a probable future, for with the knowledge of their future one is able to change certain events and possible outcomes, and this would suggest that there is no set future, but perhaps a flexible future. So, determinism, or a predestined path, would have to give way to probability, as the others that spoke before me have suggested, and a whole host of possible destinies, as one uses one's free will, future insight, and wisdom to choose a potential or probable futures. As Monica, Bella and Kirsten suggested, if we could connect to the seat of the soul, then we could actually activate a brighter future for all and us by sculpturing our futures positively and responsibly. What a wonderful world we could all live on, grow with and share together. Coming back to the mediums, I think that a lot can be got from their connection to the afterlife. For we can know that our post-mortal relatives are still with us, watching over, keeping tabs and caring for us even in the afterlife. Plus, although a lot of work can be done with letting go and moving on, I think that if we can see that we exist beyond our physical death, and that this life is a learning ground, then we will have to unite in our beliefs through our common interests. When the mediums ask afterlife questions, the spirits are usually evasive, plain stubborn, or perhaps they just do not know the answers to the ageless enigmas that the mediums ask. There are many mediums telling us that spirit tells them to just do their job, which is send these messages untainted to their loved ones in the physical world, and do not venture beyond your grave until it is your time, by asking prophetic and abstract questions. Some suggest that the discarnate souls must hold back in their revelations about the personal futures of the sitters, for it could interfere with their karma, and perhaps this is also true of the questions on deep reality. I can see, as I said, that if the spirit body can see into the future after life, then I can see no reason why, if one was connected with their spirit body, why they were alive as other people have suggested, why they could not see into the future also. However, as I said earlier, the whole makeup, or our understanding of the future, would change with this kind of exposure. One thing that does have me wondering with the mediums that I have mentioned is their differing views on God. Now, it's uncanny that all but one of the mediums that I have read has had religious upbringings, and although they have shifted into spiritualism, they have held on to their belief in their gods. They do not believe in their original teachings of God, for their gods are more loving and gentle. However, they still believe in their own personal deities that go with karma, which of course takes away God's little mistakes, or as it is philosophically voiced, the problem of evil. Then Jerry said, I must say that that was amazing. However, I must slip back a little, because I too have something to say about mediums and their philosophies, and how they seem to contradict themselves and each other when writing, or discussing the different aspects of heaven and hell. I am not going to go straight to the conclusion of the following philosophy. I am going to plow through it as I read and experienced it, so as you can all feel the full force of the contradictions, and then I will leave it up to you to make of it what you will. He cleared his throat and then he began. I must say that there is a renowned medium, and I won't say his name, because I am into truth and not mudslinging, that states that whatever we believe spiritually here on earth shall be our destination in the afterlife, and we will not be alone, because the like attracts the like, and so on and so forth. I mean that the Jews, Christians, Catholics and Muslims all go to their own heaven that in a sense has been forged by their own imaginings of what the light should be like while here on earth is outrageous. Well, that is his spiritual philosophy anyway. He goes on to say that if you were selfish, greedy, money-minded, or into the act of controlling everyone while you were alive, that you would be in the lower areas of the astral planes in the afterlife when you crossed, until you would awaken to the fact that you were in the wrong place, and you would then ask for help or guidance, where a spirit guide would come down and save you by lifting you out of the misery of the lower levels of the astral planes and transport you to a spiritual hospital in heaven, where you would begin to gain your spiritual integrity and heal. Which isn't that dissimilar to Tibetan Buddhism and a spiritualist called Swedenborg fused together. The spiritualist was a famous spiritualist who claimed to go to the spirit world with the act of astral projection when he was alive in the physical world and then come back to share his wisdom. The medium wrote that when we die, that at first, even the spiritual people live in the astral planes until they are ready to let go of their physical surroundings and memories and transcend into a higher spiritual dimension or mental state of awareness. Now, I can see that what he is stating can be seen as feasible, but his practical experience with his case studies or sittings are in conflict with his teachings. Because there was a man in one of his sittings that had crossed over who was coming through from the light that hid his face, because he was a disbeliever in the afterlife when he was alive and in the physical, and I take it that he was embarrassed at being wrong. Surely, if this man went to his imaginings of heaven, then he should have been devoid of all thought and form when he crossed over. And then there was another man in another case that believed in Christianity while he was on earth. But when he crossed, he did not find what he had expected to see. Instead of Jesus in heaven, he saw a hospital and some post-mortal relatives that had explained to him that he, like they had before him, had died and had crossed over too to find themselves alive and well in the light. And then there was another man that was somewhat confused because he had expected to find angels and harps in the hereafter, and he did not. Next, there is his belief from one of his earlier books where he wrote that the people who commit suicide stay in limbo court between the spirit world and the physical world, reliving their death scene over and over until it is their natural time to die, which could be many years. After that, he writes about a young boy who committed suicide that is in a spiritual hospital, and this meant that he did not have to wait in limbo. So why did he not have to stay trapped in limbo, one may ask? He goes on to write in another more recent book that he did not mean the limbo from the Bible, and he no longer saw them as forever trapped and living their suicide over and over until it was their natural exit point. He writes that when a person takes their own life, that the soul is not in a good state of mind, so they feel tortured and tethered to the place where they committed suicide. They are usually caught between worlds by an overwhelming sense of guilt and anguish by what they have done and the pain and grief that they have caused others to feel, and that is where they remain until a compassionate spirit comes down from the light to release them. I do not mean to attack the medium for changing his mind from one book to the next, but it does show that even they, the mediums that communicate with the dead, do not hold all the answers. I think that his philosophy and his sittings were in conflict, and that perhaps eventually his experience came shining through, which made him change his mind about the suicides being in limbo. I suppose it does show that he is not arrogant and stuck in his ways, that he is flexible and able to change his mind and progress, which I guess is a good thing. But I am glad that I read many of his books so that I could change my mind with him. I must say that I am glad that he changed his mind, though, for his latter view does not conflict with other mediums' viewpoints on the same subject. Because I have also read in other books, by other mediums, that the suicide victims go to a spiritual hospital until they recover, and they usually find that the emotional pain that drove them to suicide does not go after they kill themselves. They usually regret doing it, and they also ask forgiveness from the sitters, and say that they were sorry, so everyone can let go and move on. There is another complication, or belief, that this medium has in that we are all born into the physical world with an empty sheet as a mind, and we fill it up with our conditioning as we take hold of our world and grow. Again, his beliefs and his sittings come into conflict once more as a spirit comes through in another one of his sittings that states that she suffered from agoraphobia in her last incarnation, because in the life prior to that she had been a young girl who lived in a castle, and she was told that not everyone loved her father, who was the ruler outside the castle walls, and because of this she must never leave the castle, because she could be kidnapped or even harmed. Now, because she was an inquisitive girl, she tested the water by leaving the castle, and she was indeed kidnapped, and was found by a river with her throat slit from ear to ear, and this had been carried over into her next life as agoraphobia, clearly showing that there was no clean sheet when she was born, because she carried over baggage from her previous life. On the other hand, in another one of his books, he tells from experience and trance that we do have a path that we lay down in heaven that we must walk in the life that follows, and that we have several teachers and spirit guides that help us to keep on that path, if we listen to our intuition, that is. He also writes in the other book that our current lives are made up out of all of our previous lives, and that we chose our family situation and our economic and social status because it is necessary for our karmic and spiritual growth. I must confess that I read his books the wrong way around. I read the second first and the first second, and somewhere in between he changed his philosophy. In his first book in chronological order, not the way I read them. He believed in karma and or baggage carried over from your previous life, and the book that followed he believed in the clean sheet, and then in a more recent book that I have read he wrote that when we cross over into the light, that our consciousness expands, and we understand how our previous lives influence the judgment of the life that we have just lived, which goes back to the original way of thinking from his first book, that we do indeed carry over baggage from our past lives. After that, in the same book he writes that we are born with a blank sheet so as we do not dwell on past life problems, otherwise we would mess up our current lives by thinking about them. Then he writes in another one of his books from his seminar about a gunner who felt guilty for 3 pilots who had died because of him in a friendly fire accident. He could not control his emotions or the pressure no more, so he ran out of the sitting crying in guilt, remorse and pain, and later the medium received a letter from the sitter's mother writing to tell him that her son had taken his life. The medium was upset, and he wished that the victim could have seen the bigger picture, that they had to die for it was natural and necessary for their soul's ultimate growth. He finishes it by saying that the man should have forgiven himself instead of carrying it on and committing suicide, and that because he did not let go of the negative emotions, that his soul will bring him the lesson back to learn again in another life. So, he again in witnessing and writing that, clearly shows that karma was at play, and that he would carry over his emotional baggage into the next life, which is adverse to the clear consciousness, or blank sheet hypotheses. Finally, he also states in this last book that karma does exist, and that we carry it over with us if it has not been resolved from one life to the next. He does not see karma as revenge, he sees it as spirit's way of balancing the energy, and that when we plan our lives in spirit before we are born, we plan our lives with karma in mind, again making it difficult to see the blank sheet hypotheses. He gives two accounts of where karma was at play from his group meetings, where he does his mediumship. He wrote about two twin sisters, one in the living and one in the light, that fell out when they were both alive, when the deceased sister, who died of breast cancer when she was alive, stole and ran away with their mother's diamond bracelet, and the living sister was not happy about it and could not forgive her. The sister who had passed said that she should forgive her, because it was causing them both harm. The medium could see a block in the living sister's aura in the stomach area. That usually meant that if it was not cleared up, that physical symptoms would soon follow. The deceased sister told the living sister that she was her father in a past life, and she, the deceased sister, was one of his many daughters, and that she was his favorite. The father would take his daughter to the mines, and at the end of the day, he would put a diamond in a pouch for her, and tell her that, when she had grown up, that he would make her a bracelet that was fit for a queen. However, one day when the daughter had woken up, the father, the diamonds and all the family's possessions had gone. She searched all her life to find the father, but to no avail, and she eventually died unloved and in poverty. In this life they had both made a pact to become twins and always stay together. The living sister said that that was true, because she had always wanted to be with her sister when she was alive. In this life, they were both meant to learn about sharing and forgiveness, but had failed, so they would have to live another life to learn the lesson. The deceased sister said that she had visited her son in a dream and told him to find the living sister. She wanted the living sister to have her red shoes that were still in her closet, and she told her that she would find the missing bracelet in them. At the end of the message, the medium could see the change in the living sister's aura for the good, which meant that she was on the road to recovery. And 2. When speaking of heaven, I tend to think that we all go to the same place spiritually. If not the same location, because some of us go to hospitals, others gardens, still others waiting rooms and other meeting places, etc. But they all meet post-mortal relatives or spiritual guides at the crossing, regardless of the environment or location. I still value the medium because I believe his sittings to be true, because when he is in a sitting, the sitter, the medium and the post-mortal relatives are all receptive, happy and satisfied on either side of the veil during and at the end of the sitting. I am just saying that he should take his wisdom from his cases and not borrow it from Eastern philosophy, Swedenborg, or wherever he got it from, and it would all add up and make good common and spiritual sense. I personally believe that the mind state is the doorway to the spiritual level, to where we end up in the spirit world, but surely our minds don't create heaven. I mean the Hindus, the Muslims, the Jews and the Christians all going to their own heaven. He does write in his more recent book that heaven is multidimensional, and that the evolution of the soul dictates to where we end up, which seems to indicate a hierarchy of wisdom. So perhaps he does not mean that we create heaven from our thoughts and expectations. Perhaps he means that our wisdom and the way that we choose to live our lives socially and morally on earth is the key to where we end up when we reach heaven. Or put simply, it is not the religion that we choose to follow. It is the way that we choose to live our lives, which could make more sense, because I feel intuitively that love, peace, tolerance, kindness and compassion correlates in all theology and philosophy throughout the world, and that we are all brothers and sisters under one flag in heaven. He also writes in his later book that after we have reached and resided in the astral planes for a while and have orientated ourselves, that we move on and go to the Summerland, and that place is where Swedenborg called the bright side of heaven, the Winterland being the opposite. Another medium, John Edward, and I have named him because he is both rational and wise, that stands out from the crowd in his work and his philosophy, and he gives an analogy where he writes that our souls are like actors and our lives on the earth are the roles that we play, and that our souls influence our current lives by carrying over the experiences from our past lives. I think he means the positive experiences and traits, because he writes that he has had glimpses of the other side in dreams and when he has performed as a medium. He writes that he has seen ladders, which he thinks are a symbolic representation that there is an ongoing knowledgeable progressive path on the other side. He states that he has seen a place of learning and he knows that there are spiritual counselors there too. He also writes that he has seen places of beauty, like mountains, rivers, lakes and forests, in which our spirits live. He does believe in a spiritual karma, and he feels like it is beneficial for our spiritual status over there and also for when we return to the flesh on what we learn or accomplish in our current lives while we are here. He believes that at death, like the people who have had near-death experiences that we have a review at the crossing, and this is when we feel that we have done or made the right choices over here. He writes that we all have a spiritual master that guides us and there are other guides that help us while we are there and also here, once we return. All in all, I think he expresses what we all feel is the truth of here and the hereafter, and he has no contradictions. He also writes what I said earlier, that he does not believe from his own wisdom and according to his readings that suicide victims are in a state of limbo. Like the first medium suggested before he changed his mind, and that he gets the impression that they are sorry that they took that fatal route, and that they are in a spiritual hospital receiving help while they are getting over it. He writes that the spirits that he has tried plying for answers secretly during his readings to give him a description of the other side have treated him like a naughty inquisitive child and told him that he will find out the truth, as will everyone when it is his and our turn to make the crossing. In a nutshell, he believes that we are here to learn lessons, to help others, to try and get along with each other and to attain love while we are here and also in the light, and I think that this is an exceptional and very beautiful philosophy of the here and the hereafter. Getting back to the medium and her second book, she writes that she solved a murder case when she listened to a post-mortal man, the victim, by passing on some details about the murder to a member of her audience who was connected to him, who later gave them to a private detective who was working on the case, and the notes tallied with his research, and I'll take it that the murderer was caught and prosecuted, although she did not write about the outcome. Another reason for the spirits not making the journey could be that they fear what will happen to them if they made the crossing. They may have been bad and fear retribution from light beings or post-mortal relatives if they cross. Or they may have lived a godless, sinful life while they were alive and in the physical plane, and so at the crossing they fear God's wrath and refuse to go. She writes that the lost souls are caught in a vortex between worlds and are commonly known as ghosts. She states that spirit guides come down and gently coax them into crossing over and into the pure light, where they can heal and move on to greener spiritual pastures. Murderers and the like crossover in a not so pure light place that can be likened to hell, where all the bad spirits end up, but not the hell that is in the Bible. This hell is a healing center. The other light place or dimension, she writes, is also like a prison where the bad souls do some rehabilitation and are at the same time watched by a master spiritual guide until it is their time to enter a new incarnation to karmically repair the damage that they have done in their previous lives. She writes that it may take one or many lives for them to turn their back on evil and to embrace the light. But eventually they do get better by mixing with better people and doing positive things that enrich their lives, and then and only then can they cross over into the pure light and move on when they exit from this world to the next. She also claims to astral project at night when she sleeps, and she helps the spirits that are lost and cut off from the light in the astral planes to go home. She wrote that she got one lost soul to visit and reunite with his still living loved one that was out on the astral planes, and she got them to sort out their problems and resolve their issues that were holding him back from letting go and making the crossing. She goes on to say that she had a woman who told her in one of her seminars that she did just that for her and her deceased husband in what she thought was a vivid dream, and both the medium and member of the audience remembered it. It has, and I know that it has already been said, but I will reiterate it. That which is in the past would sleep in graveyards at night, an astral project, and help the newly deceased souls who were lost make the crossing. So perhaps she is not as far-fetched as she seems on the surface, and in her first book, she calls herself a witch from time to time in a serious, yet jovial manner. I still cannot get my head around her contradiction of the one or many exits from this earth to the next. I think intuitively that she should stick to the many, because it seems to make more sense in our postmodern world of yes, no, or maybe, and as I said earlier, the daughter in the blue sports car kind of puts the many lives into fruition, because when she decided to make the choice not to take the scenic route, she changed her destiny. On the whole, she does seem to be a good person, and she performs her spiritual duty correctly. So regardless of her philosophy, I'll overlook it and move on. I would like to give a brief outline of what she believes happens to our souls after our physical death, if it's okay with everyone. He did not wait for a reply. He just went straight back into what he was saying. In her first book, she states that she believes that you live many lives bouncing from earth to spirit until you rise above it by completing your karma, and then after that you no longer come down. You stay in spirit. Then, as her book closes, she makes another attempt at explaining what the hereafter is all about, and she explains that spirit is like a way station, and she has often described it like the huge loading docks that you have in supermarkets. We reflect on our most recent life, and after that we are taken to an appropriate department with other like-minded souls, which is based on our karma. She then repeats that she believes in reincarnation, and that we are in the process of birth and rebirth until we perfect ourselves, and then we reside with the Creator and/or the Source, or whoever you presume him to be, and that is our just reward for completing our karmic journey through our many lives. Whereas in her second book, she goes into this in more detail, and has a more spiritual slant, although I do feel a little Tibetan Buddhism is in the mix. I will not go into detail, for I would be hogging the limelight for too long if I did, and I feel that other people wish to air their views tonight, so I will give a brief outline of her passage into life after life, and if others are more interested in what I have to say, I will give them the whole of it when everyone has had a chance to talk independently and in small groups. She believes that after we have lived an existence on the earthly plane, that at first we go to a spiritual assembly room, and that is where we are bathed in the healing light energy, and we are received by an entourage of spirits. Be it one's post-mortal parents, grandparents, other relatives, friends, or other soul connections, and then we are bathed in the joy at seeing all these spirits and the love, warmth and security of the meeting place, and we begin to heal. It is here where we begin to become unattached from our earthly ties. After that we go to a waiting room, where we wait until it is our time to be summoned to take a step further into our spiritual development, and it is here where we are given our original life's contract by an elder, which she writes is a mature spirit, or an old and very experienced soul. Apparently, God dwells in the light, and if you are an elder you can go to his house and meet him in person. Getting back to the contract, these are the agreements that are made with spirit before one's previous life, and it is here where we will be sectioned off to go and meet with other group soulmates in various locations and check in. We are then given a checklist, and on it are all the things that we were supposed to have achieved in our past incarnation, plus the lessons that we were supposed to learn and people that we were meant to help and the spirits that were meant to help us, etc. It also has the people who would affect your life, the good deeds and the bad deeds that you would have experienced too. It also has the physical illnesses that one was inflicted by in the past incarnation, or would have had and then overcome. It would have the ups and downs of money situations and the impact of lovers and partners that would come and go. In a nutshell, it would have everything that you would have to achieve, influence, or be influenced by in your past life, be it spiritual, physical, or emotional. After that room, we are taken to a screening room that other mediums through trance, or patients through hypnotism that have been taken back in between lives, called the Hall of Records, and this is where we review our life so far, and we are shown what we have done in our past incarnation, be it good or bad, and we get to feel the impact spiritually and emotionally from our own and various perspectives. Once we have gone through that experience, we are then taken to the therapeutic room, where we are healed from our past life experiences, so as our soul can move forward. In this room, there are many chambers, like the yellow room, where one takes on and overcomes the impact that physical illnesses has left us within our past life. The green room is for the souls who have had and want to overcome mental illnesses from their past life. The red room is where the sadistic souls are sent, where they must fathom out why they acted so negatively by inflicting pain on others. And then there is the amethyst room, which is a very beautiful room that is bathed in purple light, and this is the room where one spends most of one's time in the therapeutic room. This is where you can clean the slate and rid oneself of all past life traumas and negative residue. Then, last but not least, there is the final part of our spiritual journey, and that is where we get to meet up with the Elder, the Master Spirit, and one's other spirit guides and spiritual connections, so that you can discover the path that you are going to make for the rest of your time in the afterlife, and it is known as the Guardianship Room, and it is here where we are shown our many lives that are scribed into the Akashic Records, or spiritual database, which show in detail one's entire lives all together, including the time spent in the hereafter. It is here that one is counseled by their Master Spirit, and one gets a deeper and more fuller connection with them, and where we view the help that one has received so far, and how we have dealt with it, or not, and it is the time to see how one has changed from all the help and experiences too. Then, we return to the screening room, and this is the place where we decide on what we are going to have to do in our future incarnation, and it is the time to see what we can do to further our experience in spirit. One does not have to go straight back to the earth plane from here. We are able and allowed to go back into the other rooms in any order, and it is a time to gain more healing if you still feel that it is needed. We can also go back to the earth to see a loved one and perhaps leave a sign, or an after-death communication, or even visit them in a dream, or on the astral planes to reassure them that we are not dead, and to help them let go and move on and adjust, or just give them a little comfort. If we choose not to be reborn at this time, we can get a job in spirit by playing many different spiritual roles, such as a spirit guide or guardian, or even a master, and help other souls in the earthly plane gain spiritual guidance and wisdom. Or we can welcome other members of our family and friends as they cross over into the afterlife. One can also live and experience the world of spirit and enjoy its many splendid views, places, and natural beauties. Eventually, she writes that we will want to come back down from spirit to be reincarnated back into human form, so as we can progress with our soul's future destiny. We re-enter the screening room, where we check out our new lives that we are going to lead, we carefully choose our plan with our master and elders and other spiritual helpers. We choose our parents and the people that we are going to meet and be our friends and acquaintances, plus the places, situations and circumstances that are processes and signs along the way that will influence our next incarnation to aid us with our spiritual growth. Everything is fine-tuned, even our social and economical levels, with nothing left out, even down to choosing our master and other spirit guides to help us as we spiritually grow. She writes that a master is a personal guide that is with us every step of the way from birth to our final crossing at death, giving us help and guidance as we go. We are meticulous to fine detail with everything that is our future physical life, and we tune into our parents' emotions and lives, and when it is our time to be reborn we connect, and then we are absorbed into our new body, and then we forget all that has been as we settle into our new lives. Oblivious that all will go to plan, and so it all begins again, as we cry and laugh in our untainted innocence, as we relive our personal part in life's play. Again, she believes in the clean slate. However, she does believe that one can connect with the life's plan, which for her is in the subconscious, so she could fit in with my hypotheses. I do not know if her spiritual philosophy is real and is truly from her guides, or an aspect of her imaginings, but it is not harmful to take them on board to give one some spiritual integrity and depth. Other mediums that I have read have been rather vague about the spirit world. They just say that we work, rest, play, learn and grow with every incarnation on this side of the veil, and that we work, rest, play, learn and grow on the other side too. They profess that they are messengers and not philosophers, and they go on to say that the power of mediumship is to show its ability to bring optimism, delight, comfort and understanding into people's lives. Another stunning fact about both the second and third mediums is that both of them have had a living spirit come to them in one of their sessions. What I mean by this is that the spirit's physical body is still alive and in a coma. They come through the same as the post-mortal spirits, only that they seem a little disorientated about their situation, and they do not have spirit guides or a master with them. Apparently, they linger around and go in and out of the comatose body until it is their time to give it up and cross over, or recover and regain consciousness. Both the mediums could not tell that they were different from their usual spirits that pay them a visit until they were informed by the sitters that the spirits were still alive, but in a comatose state. One exception was that the second medium could not ascertain any information from the spirit about its physical death, only confusion. I cannot let this discussion go without mentioning the Winterland. I mentioned the Summerland earlier, and said that it was in the higher regions of the astral planes, the next step being the light, and that is where just about every medium thinks that it is, since Swedenborg had his OBE and laid the map of the afterlife and coined the name. The Winterland is in the complete opposite position from the Summerland, and it can also be called, as everybody knows, hell. Now, most mediums will tell you that mass murderers, psychopaths, egocentric people and control freaks all go to hell, but as I mentioned earlier, hell, or the Winterland, can be and often is a temporary place in which the demon spirits occupy until they awake to the fact that the Summerland and eventually heaven is where it's at. The mediums state, and although they are all diverse in how and when they leave this alternate place, they all state that it is temporary and that all of them eventually get to go to the light. Now, before I proceed, mediums that deal with the communication between bereaved relatives and their post-mortal relatives who have crossed over into the light and ghostbusters are usually mediums, but also deal with possession of people, or haunted houses, or places where ghosts can be malicious, malevolent and mischievous, causing havoc or distress. The Ghostbusters take it one step further by using various techniques to cleanse homes and haunted places of these dark spirits that have somehow arisen from the Winterland. Hell, or the lower astral planes, and are either possessing some poor victim, or causing havoc in somebody's workplace, or home as unruly specters. The Ghostbusters either chant mantras, or holy verses, sprinkle salt, or holy water along with the burning of candles, incense, or sage, or read from the Bible, or chant pagan invocations to cleanse the premises, or banish the bad spirits from where they are not welcome, or do not belong. It does not seem to matter what spiritual techniques that they use, be it religious, or other pagan methods like Wicca, or Native American, for they all seem to work regardless of their beliefs, or the other worldly destinations that the spirits are sent to during or after the ceremony. One Ghostbuster has a plethora of spiritual helpers and guides that all chip in and do their own bit to wake the demon up and get it to cross over into heaven, where it can be forgiven, rehabilitated, and finally cured. He also calls on the help of the bad spirits' guides, guardians, gatekeepers, doorkeepers, and even their post-mortal relatives, if they have crossed over into the light and can be summoned to give a helping hand. In short, he will cast or summon anyone to awake the demon from its selfish and harmful spiritual somnambulism, and he is nearly always successful. As for the bad spirits in the Winterland, or the lower astral planes, the Ghostbusters slightly differ in their opinion to what the mediums say when talking about the spirits of this temporary accommodation. They say that some of the dark spirits that dwell there are there out of choice, and in their own adverse and twisted way they are at home and are happy and do not want to go forward into the light. They are safe in this hellish place unless they transcend into our dimension and haunt, or cause havoc, that is. For then they can get caught by the Ghostbusters, who perform a spiritual ritual or seance in what has become known as a spirit rescue, and if this happens, the entities are vanquished, sent packing, or coerced into the light, where they will be cured mentally and spiritually, and then reintegrated into our dimension as an innocent newborn child with some heavy karma to work through in its new life. Coming back to the first medium, I agree with one piece of his philosophy when he says that we can all get in touch with our God selves when we are in touch with our spirits and our spiritual nature. Because for me, God is a spiritual energy, come entity that our higher selves are all part of, and it is down to God and its earthly children to create heaven on earth, or as it has been coined, as on earth as in heaven.